Anna realized at once that something had gone wrong, because suddenly the laughter in the front rows broke off. A second ago the square was buzzing, palms were clapping, people were whistling in delight, and the host with a cheerful smile glued to his face was stretching toward her a cardboard diploma in a gilded frame with the inscription, "Honored guest of the celebration." The evening sun was blinding, reflecting off the spotlights hanging above the stage and making her squint. And suddenly, in this joyful bustle, there came a silence, the kind that happens before a thunderstorm. Again, they are pushing their own people through. Sickening to watch, someone's voice rang out clearly from the crowd, as if it were a command to begin a lynching. Almost at once, picking up the wave of distrust, another male voice from the back rows barked with obvious displeasure. Yes, everything was bought in advance. These likes are made for fools. Of course, everything was prearranged, a stout woman in a floral kerchief shouted, elbowing her way closer to the stage. I know, this so-called winner has a girlfriend in the administration. They drew her as many points as needed, and they take us for idiots. An angry, agreeing rumble rolled across the square. A man in a cap began loudly explaining to the others. My grandson says that now any snot-nosed kid can make thousands of votes out of thin air for pennies. And Maxim, he's our guy? Real. For everything he's done for our city, he should be chosen for his honesty, not this one who got in through connections. And then he defiantly spat to the side. The host was completely at a loss. He shifted his gaze from Anna to Maxim, and the diploma in his hands was trembling. The applause became rare, uneven. Anya, standing on the lit stage, felt as if she were standing naked in the middle of the square. She blinked, trying to shake off the stupor. Everything had started a few hours earlier at the entrance to the fair. There stood a wrought iron arch entwined with fresh flowers, where anyone who wanted could take an instant photo. Her friend Lita, with whom Anya had come to the city celebration, without reading the rules and giggling, literally dragged her under the lens. But an hour later it turned out that the pictures were immediately posted in the city group in a popular messenger, where a vote was going on for the main prize, 50,000 rubles. Anna, without knowing it herself, had racked up an enormous number of hearts. Friends, let's do without harsh words. The host with a strained smile raised his hand, calling for order. The online voting was fair. These two, he pointed to the real ones on stage, Anna and a man unknown to her, absolute leaders of our online voting. The situation was heating up, people were not appeased. The second finalist, a stately man of about 35 to 40, stood slightly to the side and a step behind the girl, hands in the pockets of light trousers. Anna shifted her gaze to the rival. He was looking at her calmly, slightly squinting, as if waiting to see how she would get out of this awkwardness. Catching her glance, he raised his eyebrows slightly. The gesture was short, but unexpectedly supportive. The host, apparently sensing that the air above the square was thickening, hurried to return a festive tone to what was happening. Friends, he announced into the microphone, so that no one has any doubts, we will hold a decisive round. We'll pit the leaders in a fair test. Improvisation. The crowd livened up, stirred, as if they had been offered a continuation of a spectacle that unexpectedly turned out to be more interesting than expected. The task is simple, the host continued. Improvisation. The most sincere gesture of gratitude to the winner. A ripple of laughter rolled across the square. Someone whistled approvingly, someone grumbled skeptically. Anna felt her ears burning, just as strongly as in school when she was called to the blackboard with unfinished homework. She didn't want to prove anymore that she had nothing to do with backstage decisions and intrigues. The unpleasant hints still rang somewhere in her chest, not letting her relax completely. She had never liked to justify herself, believing that honesty needs no loud statements. The man next to her leaned slightly toward her, so that his words were heard only by her. Will you be upset if I win? He whispered, teasing her. Anna, looking straight ahead, answered quietly, we'll see about that. He chuckled briefly, as if this exchange of phrases had already become part of their shared game. They stepped to the middle of the stage, finding themselves face to face under the attentive gazes of the townspeople. The wind tugged at the flags. Someone in the front row raised a phone, getting ready to record. The man stepped forward, suddenly straightening his shoulders and putting on an expression of exaggerated delight. Ladies and gentlemen, he exclaimed, theatrically spreading his arms. Before you is the incomparable, brilliant, incredible winner of our celebration." The crowd laughed. He grabbed from the table a bouquet of wildflowers meant for decorating the stage, and with a solemn air dropped to one knee, slightly bowing his head like a knight before a lady. "Accept this humble sign of my admiration," he said, and extended the bouquet to her. Anna couldn't hold back and laughed sincerely, forgetting the recent tension. In his exaggerated gallantry, there was not a drop of mockery, only warm self-irony, which unexpectedly diffused the atmosphere better than any words from the host. Giving in to a sudden surge of daring, she stepped toward him. "Thank you, my most worthy rival," she said, accepting the flowers, and, wanting to finally turn what was happening into a joke, bent down to kiss him on the forehead in a friendly way. At that very moment he, rising from his knee, lifted his head, maybe to say something, maybe to look at her, and their lips collided. Everything happened hastily, awkwardly. For a moment they just froze. Faces up close, breath one for two, and complete bewilderment about how to pull away now without looking even sillier. Anna recoiled first, eyes wide open. "Sorry," she exhaled, feeling the color flood her face. He too, flustered, but already beginning to smile, ran a hand through his hair. "Seems that was better than my bouquet of flowers," he said with a mix of embarrassment and amazement. A second of pause, and the square exploded with laughter. The laughter was not mean, but liberating, removing the remnants of distrust. Someone applauded, then someone else. And soon the applause became loud and confident. The host clapped louder than everyone, joyfully announcing, "Well, that was magnificent. And now you decide right here, and now who became the winner. Who thinks the girl won?" Maxim stepped toward the host and asked him for the microphone. "I got the best prize. A kiss from a beautiful lady. So let this lovely girl win. I give the victory to her." Anna stood next to her gallant rival, still feeling a slight dizziness from the absurdity of what had happened. The next day, when she, sitting by the window with a cup of tea, tried to piece together the memories of yesterday evening, the phone on the edge of the table buzzed sharply and briefly. Lita had sent a link to a discussion in the local forum. "You just look what they're writing. Read the short postscript, supplied with a dozen exclamation marks." Anna clicked the link and froze, looking at the playing video. On the phone screen, she looked almost like a stranger, too bright, too open, too defenseless. Every movement of hers, casual gesture, involuntary laugh, had been put on display for all to see. The short moment of the kiss was followed by a general explosion of laughter. Anna remembered that it hadn't been like in the movies. Teeth clacked unpleasantly, and she felt a sharp smell of perfume, pine needles, and a little tobacco. Anna squeezed her eyes shut hard, but the picture still stood before her eyes, like an obsessive ripple. It seemed to her that someone had invaded her personal space and tracked muddy shoes all over it. The girl looked at the screen again, and from the comments, everything blurred. "Listen, I recognized her. That's Anna Sergeyevna. She taught drawing to my son last year. Seems like a serious teacher, an intelligent woman. I didn't expect such a frank show on stage from her." "Exactly, because she's a teacher, what will she teach the kids?" Samoilova from the mayor's office, her best friend, they went to the same school. "It's clear that everything goes to their own people. Ugh, disgusting to watch this circus. Why are you like that? Anna Sergeyevna is a wonderful teacher. She's the most honest and modest person of all I know." "Heard that. A teacher? Honest. Can a teacher stage such vulgarity on stage? Don't defend her, girl. When you grow up, you'll understand how such honest ones build careers." I myself saw how that second one looked at her. All the roles there were clearly planned in advance. Shame. The question is, how much does conscience cost for such girls these days? In the midst of the argument, the group administrator posted an official report on yesterday's voting. The numbers confirmed. Anna and Maxim had scored absolutely the same number of votes, not a single vote to tip the balance one way or the other. "Well, here's the answer to all critics," someone wrote right after. Anna, in her heart, put the phone down on the table screen side down. As an adult, she understood, you can't take seriously the words of people who don't even know you. But inside, everything was burning with shame. It seemed to her that now, when she went out into the street, every passerby would see in her that same shrewd girl from the video. Anna slowly exhaled, feeling how the cup of tea in her hands had become unpleasantly cold. She wanted to shout at that screen that she had been teaching city kids to tell watercolor from gouache in their little studio for 12 years already. That she was that very teacher who washed paint off their palms and knew which of them drew sad pictures when their parents fought at home. At her age, reputation is built over years and ruined by one sideways comment from an interested anonymous. The phone vibrated again. The number was unfamiliar. "Good afternoon." A familiar voice sounded in the receiver. "This is Maxim?" "Yes, the very person who knows how to lose beautifully. At least, I really hope so." Anna involuntarily laughed, pressing the phone to her ear. The tension that had been building all morning suddenly began to release. "Beautifully is putting it mildly," she answered. "The whole city is now discussing your curtsy and everything else." "Yeah, my employees today were suspiciously quiet when I walked into the office. Seems they can't stop rewatching that video. How are you reading what they write?" I try not to look, but the phone just keeps jumping on the table. "If you believe the forum, I'm a cunning schemer who set everything up. And it turns out, am the innocent victim of your charms." Maxim, Clear's throat, chuckled. "You know, a couple of acquaintances already wrote to me. Like, 'Max, how did you get caught like that?' She twisted you around her finger. "I didn't think our little town had so many defenders of my honor." Anya sighed. "You see, you're now a folk hero, and I'm the main villain of this celebration." "I'm a SOSO hero, Anna," he answered in a somewhat guilty tone. "I really feel awkward about how it turned out. Wanted to defuse the situation, and in the end put you under crossfire." "You're not to blame, Maxim." The girl pursed her lips. "It's just a chain reaction. A stupid accident. An accident that's now breaking viewing records." His voice became softer. "Listen, I'd like to smooth the situation over a bit." "In what way?" Anna smiled. Maxim was silent, and then spoke, choosing his words. "In general, about that incident on stage, I'm both awkward, and for some reason I don't want to apologize at all. If I hadn't stuck my neck out then with that curtsy, we wouldn't be chatting now." "Interesting approach." Anna smiled again. "So you decided that a city-wide scandal is the best way to get acquainted?" "Not the best, but definitely the most memorable," he answered and suddenly suggested. "Let's have coffee." "Taking a risk, Maxim? We might be seen." She teased him. Maxim laughed into the receiver. "Let them look and be jealous that I got lucky enough to invite the most talked-about woman in town on a date at 6 o'clock at the cafe on Central." "Good." Anna nodded to the invisible interlocutor. Clear's throat. "But the deal is, no microphones and stages. Exclusively a quiet conversation." She felt he was smiling on the other end of the line. "See you." In the cafe on the Central Street, it smelled of fresh pastry and ground coffee. They sat by the window, choosing a table a bit to the side, where they could talk calmly, without shouting over the music. He turned out to be the same as on stage, ironic, but attentive, able to listen without interrupting and without trying to pull the conversation onto himself. They talked about trifles, about how hard it is sometimes to step out of a familiar role, about how the city is small and rumors and gossip live longer in it than good news, about how, as adults, awkwardness is experienced differently, deeper, Clear's throat, but also wiser. In his gaze there was no mockery, only calm interest. And Anna caught herself feeling that it was pleasant to be near him, and she didn't have to pretend. When they left the cafe, the evening air seemed transparent, almost festive. He didn't try to take her hand, didn't rush things, only said, "Glad that yesterday I lifted my head so luckily, and today we met again." And it sounded like a careful promise of a continuation. Several days passed calmly. They texted briefly, without obligations, sometimes exchanging jokes about the ridiculous contest. Anna, returning to her affairs, suddenly noticed that she looked at her phone more often, expecting a message. And then, coming out of the bookstore, she saw him. He was walking on the other side of the street, leaning slightly toward the woman walking next to him. They were laughing, their shoulders almost touching, and in that movement there was a closeness not accidental, but habitual. The woman was telling something, gesturing actively, and he was listening, smiling with that same smile that Anya had already managed to memorize. Anna slowed her step, feeling something quietly clench inside. He didn't notice her. They walked past, dissolving into the flow of people, and then he hugged that woman. Anna didn't seek explanations, didn't allow herself to squint offended or make up an excuse. At 35 people already know, A ridiculous incident in front of a crowd is not yet a reason to wait for a call. A game on stage is still a game, however sincere it might have looked. In the evening, the phone was silent, and the next day too. Anna worked in a small art studio at the City House of Culture. She carried herself emphatically strict, building around herself an invisible wall. In the studio, it was hardest of all. The cozy space, which used to smell only of paints and canvases, now seemed saturated with tension. Parents, who always came in to discuss the children's successes, now picked them up silently, nodding to the drawing teacher with some new, ambiguous politeness. A couple of times she caught the glances of teenagers. They whispered, looking at smartphone screens, and fell silent as soon as she approached the easel. She worked through force, met with Lita, discussed everyday trifles, as if nothing had changed. Only her friend now behaved like a guilty elephant in a china shop. Every now and then she was about to find an IT guy to erase this nonsense. Then she brought expensive chocolates, which irritated even more. The visit to the director put a final point on her doubts. Valery Karlovich, who always greeted Anna with a wide smile, this time didn't even raise his head. He was intently studying some ledger, as if the answer to all world mysteries had suddenly been discovered in it. Anechka, you understand, he mumbled, not looking at her. We have a budget institution. Parents are writing complaints to the mayor's office about moral behavior and some corruption ties. They called me from the education department, said, resolve the issue. And how do you propose to resolve the issue? Anna's voice was icy. Write a resignation of your own accord until everything calms down. He finally raised his eyes to her, in which a strained plea was read. Wait a couple of months. And there Anna didn't listen to the end. She left the office, feeling how the corridor walls, which she herself had once helped paint, suddenly became foreign. The girl was putting brushes into an old leather tube when the door creaked. At this hour it was usually quiet. The children had already left, and the evening classes hadn't started yet. In the doorway stood Maxim. He froze on the threshold, as if gathering courage, and uncertainly clutched a paper bag from the neighboring coffee shop in his hands. Anna felt an unpleasant ache in her chest. It happens before a long and difficult conversation, another long and difficult conversation. When will this all finally end? She thought, and aloud said emphatically indifferently, good afternoon. He stepped closer, stopped at the table, and in his gaze there was no former carefree irony. Only a slight awkwardness of a person who understands he's late with explanations. You know how to draw conclusions faster than I managed to explain, he said with a cautious smile. Anna folded her arms across her chest, trying to make the gesture look more composed than defensive. Sometimes that's a useful quality. She answered, saves time. He exhaled quietly and put the bag on the table next to the tube. Anya decided not to drag it out and started first. You know, on stage it all looked like a fairy tale. Sincerity, accidental kiss. But a couple of days ago I saw you in the city with a woman, and I'm not the type who likes to peek into other people's windows. Understanding slowly appeared on his face. He opened his mouth to get a word in. But Anna shook her head, not letting herself be interrupted. I'm not 20 years old to play hide-and-seek or wait for a free evening to be allocated to me between family obligations. I'm not ready to date a busy man, no matter how beautiful his gestures were on stage. So let's leave this as a moment in the past that doesn't obligate anything. A heavy silence hung in the studio. You could hear a car driving past outside the window. He looked at her for a minute seriously, without that unfamiliar irony, and then rubbed the bridge of his nose, and a tired smile suddenly appeared on his face. Anna, I infinitely respect your directness, and if that woman were my wife or fiancée, I would just leave now, not daring to bother you. But the woman you saw me with, that's my older sister Paulina. Anna blinked. All the quips and words she had been selecting for so long suddenly flew out of her head at once. Sister, she repeated, and against her will surprise flashed in her voice. She came for just 3 days, he continued, stepping a little closer. We have family matters, train stations, old Andes. I didn't take the phone out of my pocket, and when I realized I hadn't written to you for several days, I cleared his throat, felt ashamed to explain over the phone, and I decided to bring coffee. Anna slowly lowered her arms. The anger at another woman left, leaving emptiness after itself. She looked at the cups in the bag, then at her boxes. This no longer matters, Maxim. You're not guilty of anything. But because of that kiss on stage, I lost my job today. Maxim froze. His gaze fell on the tube, then on her bag. Wait, how did you lose it? He frowned, peering into her face, as if trying to comprehend the scale of the absurdity. He walked around the studio, hands in his pockets, and stopped by the window. You know, he spoke after a long pause. I was this morning in the old print shop at our factory. We demothballed it, wanted it for warehouses, but there are such windows there, Anya. I was still standing and thinking, too much light for boxes. He turned sharply to her. To hell with warehouses. Let's open your studio there, a real one. Anna froze with the brushes in her hands. What are you talking about? She didn't understand. You need a place where kids can paint the sun blue if they want. He looked at her with enthusiasm. I'll talk to the administration. It seems to me they'll be glad. And if you run master classes for my employees and their kids, maybe we can even agree on penny rent. And there's a separate entrance. No walking through the factory. Anna looked at him for a long time, trying to find a catch in his words, but saw only calm determination. The tube with brushes remained lying on the table. Are you serious? She asked quietly. More than. Consider this my personal protest against moral facades. He finally handed her a cup of coffee. Drink, Anya. We have a lot of blueprints, permits ahead, and, it seems, a whole lot of blue paint. The whole next day they spent in his office, meeting with the administration and factory engineers, and in the evening they inspected the print shop. Dust danced in the rays of the setting sun breaking through the huge windows, and the echo of their steps resounded hollowly from the high ceiling. Maxim walked with a tape measure, marking out zones, and Anna caught herself thinking that for the first time in many years she wasn't just a teacher at an institution, but someone much bigger. The fear of the future that had been choking her all morning dissolved in the voice of the captivating man and fresh plans. Lita, learning about the changes, first chattered for a long time into the receiver from Relief, and then quickly created a new group in the messenger. This time the name was short and clear. Anna Pichushkina's Art Studio. Enrollment open. By morning there were already 20 people there. Autumn, the time of fairs, and the next one took place already in a week. Maxim suggested going, looking, but not participating in any contests. We're going as private individuals, he laughed, adjusting his scarf. No online voting, only cotton candy and fresh air. As soon as they approached the central square, a whisper ran through the crowd. The host, noticing them from afar, beamed. He recognized both of them at once. With a radiant smile, he addressed them through the microphone. And here's the most famous couple from our last celebration. And laughed loudly. Hope you're ready for a new improvisation. The crowd picked up the laughter, and Anya felt a light excitement. Short improvisation. The host continued, winking, and stared at them expectantly. Anna smiled shyly. Maxim stood next to her calmly, confidently, but his eyes suddenly sparkled with familiar playfulness. The crowd laughed, getting ready to see another comedy scene. The host could barely contain his smile. We'll show everything here, Maxim shouted to him. And then he simply turned to Anna, shielding her with his back from curious glances and smartphones, and gently took her hands. I'm doing this absolutely consciously, he said to his companion, and for her his voice drowned out the noise of the crowd without any amplifiers. He kissed her slowly and completely seriously, without that awkwardness that was on stage. This time the world wasn't collapsing, but on the contrary, finally froze, stopped winking with smartphone cameras, and demanding justifications. For a moment Anna's breath caught, and the ground under her feet seemed to become softer, making her lose balance for a second. She unconsciously clenched her hand in her pocket, feeling the sharp edges of a key. The cold metal pricked her palm, reminding her of the spacious hall of the print shop, of the huge windows, and that now she had somewhere to return to. This prick of reality was the sweetest feeling in the world. The square behind Maxim's back rustled, broke into applause, but that sound reached Anna as if through a thickness of water. Everything that had tormented her the last week, sideways glances, whispers behind her back, fear of tomorrow, everything suddenly became small and unimportant. She closed her eyes, allowing this dizzying feeling of freedom to wash over her completely. Now she knew for sure, if the sun in her studio would be blue, then so be it. And you're right. Did you like my story? And be sure to subscribe to our channel. In just a couple of days a new story will come out here. Don't